Good afternoon. It's Thursday, January 6th. I want to talk about disability as relates to being an artist. And parts of it are purely practical and quite specifically related to being a ceramicist. And other parts of it may unfortunately be deemed by some people to be political, or what they call political. Okay. What I call political are decisions like, where do you put a highway bypass, or, what combination of taxes do you use to fund a school district? In this case, disability issues have to do with basic human rights. The fact that we, as an allegedly rich culture, should not be allowing people to freeze to death or starve to death or any of that kind of stuff. That is not a political choice about the use of our money. That's a moral choice, and we're failing at it. So, for many people, part of the slide downward in our culture has to do with a physical or mental disability. And I'm not in that governmental hierarchy. I don't have access to the criteria, But I know, for instance, that as a bus driver, I work with people who could not physically do a job that involved standing for 8 hours. They just couldn't. Luckily, not all jobs require that. And not all jobs, and they're perfectly good bus drivers. And they get to sit for most of it, and they're mobile enough to do what they need to do to be a good bus driver. So there are versions of being disabled which only disable you from certain types of work, or the work you used to do, say, that involved standing 8 hours a day. So I used to have a job, hypothetically, I used to have a job that required a lot of standing. Something has happened. I have this partial disability. The workplace hasn't been able to figure out how to let me do it sitting down. For instance, in Europe, in grocery stores, the cashiers all sit down. It's not a moral problem. It's a willingness to give them a stool and to lower the equipment. It works fine. It's actually sort of an embarrassment that our country requires grocery store cashiers to stand for their entire shifts, or retail clerks to stand for their entire shift. It's ableist. It automatically excludes people who can't do that physical sort of a thing. Okay. So one of the things that people do when they get on disability, or need to, and the government is lagging, is they find other ways to make money, and one of those ways is to produce art. And although in the past I have occasionally thrown standing up, I do not typically do it now. So if I were to be a full-time potter, I wouldn't need to stand 8 hours a day, except if at the fairs. I might stand 8 hours a day total, but not in one chunk or two chunks or something like that. So that's sort of an injury, a bad knee, a shattered hand, whatever. I can still be a potter. Theoretically, if you're a writer of suspense novels, it would be very, very hard to get so disabled you could no longer write suspense novels. Okay, so the nature of work is part of this problem. There's a lot of simple-minded people that want the idea of a fully capable worker to be a coal miner, or agricultural worker, or something really physical, and that's no longer necessary in our culture, and it's certainly not appropriate for all the jobs. This always comes up when they want to raise the retirement age, And it's like, okay, well, I mean, I could see where, you know, if your work was not physically demanding, you could continue working until you were 70 or something like that. But firefighters, you're not going to go to the firefighters union and tell them that they need to change their retirement schedules so that they don't start retiring until they're 70. It's not going to happen. Okay. So we have to get around this sense of disability, partial disability, disability from some work. When you're working in the arts, it can help to sort of work out how much does this particular media require. So, for instance, I knew a woman who specifically bought a de-earing pug mill to save her back, to give her back an extra 10 years so that she didn't have to wedge her clay. So she was, small, physically a small person, big personality, small person. But she planned ahead for either avoiding the disability of a bad back or coping with the disability by adding machinery that would allow her to proceed anyway. Anyway, I think the long and the short of it is the culture in general needs to work on this. If we treated everyone better, more people could be artists. And even if you are an artist, you're not necessarily going to be able to work in a specific medium into your 70s and 80s. You're either going to need some helpers or some special equipment or some luck, or what I recommend is having some personal diversity. This ties in with being a part-time artist. If you can fulfill that need for yourself, forget about what the culture thinks you need. If you can fulfill your need to work in a variety of ways with a variety of stresses, you improve your chances of being able to continue to work in some productive way, however you define productive, as long as you want. And that's the goal. So, we're not 20 forever. It's actually a good thing. But when you're working this out, you do have to spend some time, or you should spend some time to think about what sort of disabilities could you get past should they come up. Anyway, it's not a cheerful topic, and I wish our culture did better. So, have a good evening.